Welcome to the Money Insights Podcast, where high-income earners come to learn wealth-building strategies that will take them from high income to high net worth. With your hosts, financial and wealth-building experts, Christian Allen and Rod Zabriskie.
Welcome into today's episode of the Money Insights Podcast, the alternative wealth-building podcast for high-income earners. My name is Christian Allen, here with my co-host, who we all know as Rodney the Pod Zabriskie. Rod, what's up, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
I couldn't be better. The sun is shining.
Yeah.
I'm only missing one of my two AirPods.
Okay.
And I am absolutely ready to roll.
Sweet. Yeah, I love this time of year. There's just so much to love. I always bring up football. Football is big. But
football is life. Are you just a big football? Okay, Rod. So I used to be a football guy, and I still keep up a little bit, but I've just as I get old, I'm becoming one of those old guys that I thought, where did they lose their passion for the game?
That's becoming
I'm just
you?
It's becoming me. I'm like, there's more important things than getting up in arms if my team loses and, being like angry with my wife and children if my team loses. That stuff's not that important to me.
Yeah, I still remember there was a game. So it was the big rivalry game, right? BYU was playing Utah, and we hadn't beat them for several years. This wasn't quite getting up to the 10-year mark, but we were probably around 6 or 7 years that we lost to them. And we scored a touchdown in the last seconds. Kick the extra point. We tie it up. We go into overtime, and they decided to go for two.
And our man Taysom Hill still playing in the NFL today. He couldn't get in though.
Everybody knew what the play was going to be, and I had to take a walk. Because I couldn't just sit there and not. I was stewing over it. So, and it was midnight, right? It's one of these late games, and I'm wandering through the streets of my town, just like
it was wild. Rod pacing through the streets of Payson, probably with like a dozen other people your age.
I'm sure I would have bumped into them, but I didn't see them. I was like blind to everything going on.
All right, Rod. So as much fun as it is to hear about your football antics over the years, let's get into our topic today. But before I do that, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Did you know October is National Book Month?
I did not know that.
That's right. So in commemoration of National Book Month, and I heard this, by the way, because my wife, Heather, is good at following social media. Sharon Lecter was sharing some of her favorite books in commemoration of National Book Month. And I thought, man, it's just appropriate being that it's National Book Month. And honestly, I didn't know that before I picked the topic. It just worked out really great.
Okay.
But in commemoration of National Book Month, we are going to bust out our top 5 books for building wealth.
Yeah.
Top 5 wealth building books. And Rod, this is where it gets really fun. We're even going to throw in a few bonuses.
Yeah, I like it.
I asked Rod to throw in a bonus of a not to read bonus and another book that doesn't necessarily have to be focused around wealth building.
And I'm glad you did.
I may have an extra one above and beyond that.
Oh boy. Okay, if you do, then I might too. But I was glad you did that because I was trying to figure out a way to work that particular book, one of my favorites of all time, into building wealth, and I was just having a hard time doing this. So you made it easy, so I didn't.
So I made it easy. Okay, well, I'm glad. I feel like, Rod, I know at least 2 or 3 of the books on your list.
Yeah.
And so I made at least an effort to diversify amongst the books that you would likely pick.
Yeah.
So we might share a couple in common, but I decided to kind of mix it up a little bit. So that being the case, Rod, I think I want you to go first. Okay. So we're just going to go back and forth. First book, Rod, you kick us off with your top 5. Number 1. Okay, wait. I've got to clear this up. This isn't in order, is it?
Yeah, not necessarily. I'll put it this way. I'm starting with the book that everybody knows what it's going to be. 99% of people out there are saying, well,
Rod's favorite book is this.
I heard Rod say anything in the past. Therefore, I know what his first book's
This
going to be.
must be. Okay. Okay. So, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like ranked 1 through 5. Mine is not.
Correct.
And that's why I
Yeah.
wanted to clear that up.
Yep. That
Okay.
is true.
Okay, Rod. Well, now that we know what your first book is, or at least 99 out of 100 people listening likely do, why don't you kick us off and
Okay.
tell us what your first book is?
And I'm also going to say that I cheated a little bit, because if I'm going to go with Rich Dad Poor Dad, I had to also just combine it with Cash Flow Quadrant, because they go hand in hand.
Do you see my face right now, Rod? Do
I
I
do
look
see
happy?
You look very disgusted.
Okay, well, you're making it more and more difficult for us people over here trying to diversify among Rod's favorite books. To how many? So I just have to say anything written by Robert Kiyosaki or Sharon Lecter?
I did not include anything
Okay,
beyond. Well, I guess I should.
I'm just messing with. I was just cheating. I was just taking it at like 3 steps further. Obviously, you didn't take it that far, but I will say this, Rod, because at the last minute, I put on there none other than the Cash Flow Quadrant, thinking Rod's gonna have the first one. I'll go with the Cash Flow Quadrant,
and that seemed fair. I totally threw a curveball.
So you.
And you swung and you missed.
Luckily, I did. I guess I didn't even know I was. I guess I knew I was swinging, and I just didn't think that you would pick both of those. Right? Okay, but fair enough. Why don't you tell us why those books are on your list?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, this was the beginning of my journey, putting me on this path. I can't think of anything before that. I read these when I was in college, and I can't think of anything before that I read that was strictly financial, and these just like they put me on the path like that I'm on now with everything, with vision of owning a business, with the way I think and invest and raise my family. Anyway, all kinds of different things kind of branch off of what I read.
Seems like a solid reason to have it in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Since I only had one of the 2 in the top 5, I'll tell you the reason why I had the Cash Flow Quadrant in there. And you'll see as we go through, I had this much better set up because you were going to see already what the previous books were. And then I was going to say, like, as is probably on brand with my style, you can kind of see how the Cash Flow Quadrant fits into it. So that being the case, Rod, and anybody listening to this, I apologize that you don't have that context. But here's the deal. The good news is it's still on brand, and I'm all about mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about, from my perspective, when you're really wanting to build wealth, the first key, the first stage, maybe the first 5 stages are about making a lot of money, more so than they're about being like some prolific, incredible investor. So if you can't make a lot of money, it's really hard to become a prolific investor, right? So most people, if you think about it, build their own business, create wealth, and then they become prolific investors because they have the ability to do that. High income earners save money, and then they can become more prolific investors. But there's got to be the starting point. So I like this idea that we have something to strive for. We have a quadrant that we can, and again, I think about it, investor is ultimately like the quadrant we want to get to, right? And the nice thing is regardless of where we start, we can get there. But again, from my perspective, it's kind of a step-by-step thing. And most often we have to do a few things before we get there. So for me, it helped me like create a really simple diagram in my head. I mean, I didn't create it. I was able to use that diagram and put my life the way that I think, just kind of plop it on there. And it just made a lot of sense for me.
Yeah, and I think the key word there is simple, right?
It is really simple.
If it is overly complex, if it's like, digging deep philosophically, all these things, then it would be harder to grasp, to follow. But it is. It's like a framework. It's simple.
Framework. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. It's a framework. And it's a framework I've used. It's a framework we've used to teach people about building wealth for the last 10 years.
Yep.
So good stuff. Okay.
Although you skipped a quadrant.
Oh yeah, I did.
That's not a fault. That's actually to your credit. I I decided that I wanted to be an employee first to kind of learn the ropes, learn some things before jumping in on
There's
the.
totally nothing wrong with being an employee and jumping from employee to investor.
Hey.
You can still totally do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Rod, that was the first one. Number 2, since I just did that one, even though was out of my order, why don't you kick us to the second one on your list? What is it?
Okay, so mine, it is still kind of going with the theme. And it is Tax-Free Wealth, Tom Millwright.
Nice.
And this is one that I read of all of these that I'm going to introduce today. This was actually the last one I read.
Okay, do you have a visual for all of them, Rod?
I do.
Gosh, that was great. What a touch.
I actually own that book, but I lent it to somebody, and so I don't.
It wasn't me, was it?
Well, it was, but I didn't want to bring that up.
It was? Did you just give it to me, or did I ask for it?
Oh, I don't remember. I think we were talking about it, and you were like, I should read that. So I was like, hey, here you go.
Maybe I thought it was a gift.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
That's probably what it was.
We'll go with that.
All right. Well, let me look in my my kitchen of books here and see if I can come up with that. Okay. That's a good one, Rod. And I will be honest with you, I have not read it, but I know the philosophies and ideas around it. And obviously we talk at length about how important the tax element is.
Yeah.
And of course, Tom Millwright's a guru in tax.
Yeah. And if I can read I can't remember the subtitle or whatever. It's How to Build Massive Wealth by Permanently Lowering Your Taxes.
Oh man, you love that permanently word.
It is. Well, and so that actually, it's that philosophy that he hits on first of, he talks about how we don't want to just defer taxes, we want to save them. He also talks about how he runs into people who are like, it's my patriotic duty to pay my taxes. And he's like, okay, great, but let's play their rules. Like, they created the rules, let's play by them. So if by playing by the rules, you can pay fewer taxes and build more wealth. Let's do that.
And still be patriotic.
That's right. Yep. So,
right,
and then he gets into the kind of brass tacks of ideas and things that you can actually do. And anyway, so I think it's just really, really well put together.
That's a good one. Shout out to Tom. He was at our summit last year, and we've done a bunch of stuff with him and over the years. Okay. Next one, Rod, can I get to go next? I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
And I actually cheated in this one kind of like you did.
Okay.
But I don't think that I'm concerned about you having chosen this book. So in that way, I just wasn't worried about it. But here's the deal. You will expect me to have this. Oh, actually, man, I'm all out of order, Rod. I started going to my number 2, but I got to go to my number 1. So let me back the truck up.
Back it up.
Number 1. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. So my dad was a believer in the power of positive thinking and self-help books. And so from the time I was young, he always had these on his stand bookshelf. That's what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And encouraged us to read them. I actually did. Now, I have read all of it a couple times since, but when I was a kid, I would just read a few pages here and there.
Yeah.
But I always kind of resonated with the concepts. Now, it was a little bit of like hard reading when I was younger.
Sure.
But and it's a book that's a lot older, so it's not like this like really fluid, easy read. And yet, from a philosophical standpoint, it encompasses like deep down how I believe life can go for us. If that's like I really believe in the power of mind and thought and accomplishing things according to what we believe. And that's obviously what the book is. So
very cool.
What you think of, you can accomplish. And that's, I believe, a big portion of why we've been able to build where we are today. And we're young. We have a long ways to go, Rod. So I love Think and Grow Rich.
I like it too. In fact,
great.
It actually was
on there.
Well, it was on my list, but I came prepared with a backup.
Oh, nice.
So, but we'll toss it up there just because I did come prepared.
Okay. So, good work. Nice work. Okay. Think and Grow.
And anyway, but no, I totally agree. And that's the thing is it is a mindset more than anything else. Before tactics, before philosophy, before saving on taxes, before cash flow quadrant, all that kind of stuff. Mindset.
Yeah, you have to believe it, right? Okay, so Think and Grow Rich, that's a must. It's a must read. Okay, Rod, I'm going to go again because although I guess we're just going back and forth. So let's go back and forth again. Okay, what's your next one?
Okay, so my next one is called Your Money or Your Life.
Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin. Joe
Dominguez and Vicki
Joe
Robin,
Dominguez, Vicki Robin. Okay, I've never read this one either, Rod.
This one,
this is good.
Yeah, this is what I found a while. I found most of these things, like my wife reads first, and then she's like, "Hey, this is really good." Like, okay, I'll read it too.
Oh, nice.
So she had read that.
Shout out to Jody.
And by the way, it was one that was mentioned actually in Die with Zero.
Oh yeah.
And he mentioned it as like kind of a catalyst for some of the things he was doing. And the key with it is money is a tool. So you get what you want out of life. Again, so let's kind of create a trail from Think and Grow Rich, right? A mindset idea to then kind of carrying out, creating goals and strategies and philosophy and all that kind of stuff. And so this one basically becomes almost like a fallback in terms of keeping perspective, right? Remembering, hey, money is what you want it to be, like what you want to turn it into in terms of your real goals in life, right? Your real purpose in life. So anyway, that's why I thought it was a really good one.
Okay, I like it. That's a good one. I'm going to put on my list of must-go reads. Wow, that didn't make sense. Must-go read. Okay, Rod, the next one on my list, you will not be surprised that I will have my good friend Bob Berg and John David Mann, who wrote the Go Giver series. There's two of them. Go Giver, the Go Giver Sells More. These are not finance-related books, FYI. Not directly anyway.
Yeah.
Right? But again, they're very on brand for me. So my starting point for building a successful financial foundation, I'm just to be very honest with you, I'm not as strong in the details. I'm not a good budgeter, but I'm pretty dang good at growing and building and making money and making a lot more money than I spend.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that has been at least a belief that it's about providing as much value as we possibly can. So just as an example, you think about kind of how Money Insights works, and philosophically, we generally won't even ask people for meetings, right? So we put out content, we put out information, we try to make it as valuable as we possibly can, and then give people the opportunity as they want to on their timeline, without pressure, to come to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that's a big part of what's helped us be successful. And I think that that's kind of the success method in life if you put it out there. Now, I'm not here to suggest that there's not like greedy, awful people who make it big, but like if you want to live like your best life, the combination of being wealthy and happy, I really believe providing value without constantly being worried about what's coming back to you.
Yeah.
The irony behind it is if I can do it, I just end up getting way more back than I put in.
Yeah.
And so that's my belief. I love the whole idea of the Go Giver series. I read it, I guess, probably 12 or so years ago, and it's been one of my faves ever since.
Yeah, and that comes as no surprise. I should have thought of that. I hadn't before you brought it up, but
Rod even was kind enough to give me a Go Giver award. So this is funny. The Go Giver, they have like a Go Giver organization. This is like a promotion for Bob's organization here. They have this Go Giver, and they like actually create these awards. And so if you do certain things or whatever, you get the Go Giver award. And Rod was kind enough to be like, in a moment of generosity, it was just a nice moment, Rod. I don't know what to say.
I was inspired by your go giving. I thought, I'm going to try to be a go giver. I'm going to go find this certificate.
Man, I love it. I love it. So Rod got me a Go Giver certificate, and I wish I could say that I had it like I don't know where that thing went, Rod, but I do remember it well, and I really appreciate it.
That was a
So,
few offices
thank you.
ago. Yeah.
That was a few offices back. Okay, so that's the Go Giver series. Rod, remind us the 3 books that you have hit on so far. I'll remind the 3 that I've hit on, and then we'll get into our 4th book.
Sounds good. So I cheated on the first one because it was a combination of Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant.
That's
so
where you took my 5th.
Yep. And then I had Tax-Free Wealth.
Tax-Free Wealth.
And then I had Your Money or Your Life.
Your Money or Your Life.
Yes.
Okay. So Rod, we're moving down it. So these are the must reads. Must reads, Rod.
Must reads.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Number 4. What's your number 4 must read in order to grow massive wealth? I want to borrow some lines from Tom.
Perfect. Okay, so I went to business growth, building a business.
Okay.
That is going to last, and so I went to Good to Great.
Good to Great.
Jim
Okay.
Collins. That probably would not be a surprise for you either, for me to pick that one.
Nope, not a surprise. Although, Rod, this is terrible. I'm not meaning to undermine your book here because it's a great book. It really is.
No, don't do it.
But I still have to do it. So when I started in the financial services industry, I started with a group here in Salt Lake, Beneficial Financial Group.
Yeah.
And they were still a big company, but like a regional type company, right?
Yeah.
Not as big as some of like AIG as an example.
Oh, for example, yeah.
However, Beneficial, I remember like my first when they're like introducing the new class of people coming in, the new professionals coming in, the president of the company gets up and he speaks to us and he tells us about Good to Great and how they're modeling after Good to Great. And specifically they're modeling after AIG, which, can I just tell you, at that time wasn't the best move. So of course AIG had a very specific way that they were investing, which was overly or too heavily in the mortgage-backed securities side of things. Well, guess what? Beneficial did the exact same thing because they wanted to go from Good to Great, just like AIG. Okay. I'm totally, but that's what it reminds me of. And yet, as I go back and I think about the principles when I read that book, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And there's obviously many, many very good companies. That's just one kind of silly off example. And can I just also say this about AIG? They're still going and pretty strong. And they, from my understanding, have paid back all of the debts that they borrowed from the government and are in a clean and strong place. So maybe they still were a good company after all.
Yeah. And what's funny too is this here, whatever it was 3-4 years ago when really bad press was coming out for Wells Fargo. And I couldn't help but think about that too, because they were one of their featured companies.
Yep, Wells Fargo. Well, they were weren't they creating like phony accounts kind of thing? To
getting
create
bonus and everything because they were just
dang it.
But okay, can I have just a couple of principles though that really stood out? And the first one is just kind of the basic premise of the book. And it is that good is the enemy of great. Meaning, if you get good at something and you just get comfortable and you're like, I'm good, I don't need to try harder, then you can't get to greatness. And I think about obviously they have companies, but as far as like athletes go, to me, someone like Kobe Bryant is the epitome of that. That he, natural talent, yes, but he became what he became because he wasn't content with good. And he worked hard and he, just was like a machine.
The Mamba mentality, Rod.
Yeah, everything. So anyway, that's the first principle. And the second one.
Wait, Rod, are you saying that you have taken on the Mamba mentality yourself?
I would say that if good is the enemy of great and we want greatness, that because it's a mentality for yourself, but it's also for other people. So to look at somebody and say, oh man, they're really successful, they've done great, they've achieved greatness. And sometimes our tendency is to say, well, it's because of whatever, like they just have a natural talent for this or that or the other thing. And we ignore the fact that it takes an enormous amount of effort and time and focus and leaving a whole bunch of other things undone because you're just putting so much time and effort into that to get there. So
sounds like the Mamba mentality to me. That's on.
all over. And then the other thing that I wanted to hit on that I think I still am trying to wrap my mind around this. In the book, he talks about an admiral who in the Vietnam War was taken as a prisoner of war, and you can go read the book if you want to get more details on what happened there, but just really horrible things, right? And when he got done and he got home, he said that if he had to choose it, he would go through that again because of the things that he learned while he was there. And that is just wild to think about. That someone
sounds like insanity to me, Rod.
Yeah, right. Like, why would you choose it? And he answers it himself, right? Because of the things he learned while he was there. And so we do have hard times. We go through hard times, and let's make the most of it, right? Like, we're going to go through hard times anyway, like all of us are. So learn what you can from that, and that'll help you go from good to great.
I love it. Okay, I couldn't agree more. It's a great book. Okay, Rod, my number 4 book, and I'm trying to see how many authors I can go with that are dead and before 1950.
Okay.
Today, this one, we're going with How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's another one that sat on my dad's bookshelf.
Yeah.
And can I just tell you, it's one of the first self-help books that I ever got into, and it kind of like brought me into that mode. So I'm a believer. Okay, so this is going to sound really weird, and maybe I don't want it to sound like arrogant because I have like all sorts of shortcomings. But one thing that I've historically been pretty good at is communicating and like connecting with people, right?
Yeah, I would say
and this book kind of highlighted some of what I was naturally good at, but it also challenged me to try to become a lot more than that, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like that mentality that you get from Think and Grow Rich or Good to Great, where you're saying, okay, I might have some natural talent or skill in this, but that's not enough. And I genuinely believe that wealth most often comes by creating influence, whether that's by creating a business, whether that's because you're an incredible salesperson, whether it's because you're an amazing physician. All of these things require you to learn how to win friends and influence people, or at least if you want to be as successful as you possibly can, that's the way to do it, right? Most people, again, this is just my experience and from my viewpoint, most people that go kind of up the ladder the most quickly have this unique skill set in that they can genuinely connect with people and really have an ability to influence. And oftentimes it's influence. Hopefully it's an influence for good, but influencing people one way or another, and that'll get you really far. And certainly that'll help you build wealth. So that's why that one fits on my list.
All right. I like it. And there seems to be a little bit of a connection or maybe a theme between that one and the Go Giver series. It's about people. It's about your interactions, right?
Yeah, and that's just how I believe it. If you look at my world, that's just how I function in the world. That's why Rod's there. Rod's like can actually get down into the weeds and details and make sure that we're doing the right things. And of course, it's really amazing. It allows me to kind of not have to deal with those things and do the things I'm good at. So anyway, I just genuinely believe that growing wealth is first and foremost about the way you think and the way you behave. And secondly, about what you actually do with money.
Yeah.
It's about wealth creation. And then it's about becoming like a prolific investor.
I like it.
Okay, Rod, we're moving through these. What is your number 5 book?
Okay, my number 5 book is Atlas Shrugged.
Atlas Shrugged.
By Ayn Rand.
I knew it.
This one, I had to make a little bit of a stretch, because her point was not to talk about growing wealth necessarily, right? She was absolutely like a capitalist, and that was her whole point, like down with communism, up with capitalism. But so for me, reading this book, I read this in kind of like my formative years of building my own business. And so seeing these people and their attitude toward what they were doing in building their own businesses was just, it was just, I don't know, eye-opening, inspiring to me, to see it was as much about, like, to them, doing the right thing was striving for excellence. Like, they couldn't do anything different. That was just ingrained in, and that was their DNA. And of course, it's very much a political book. Like, there's a lot of other things and messages that she was trying to communicate. But for me, and that's why I pick it, is because of that element of it.
Okay, I like it. Good stuff. I actually, man, I feel bad. I haven't read a few of the books on your must-read list, Rod. So I've got some work to do. I got some work to do. Book club? Should we start a book club, Rod?
We should. That would be cool.
All right. We'll have to think about it. And if anyone's interested in a book club with us, shoot Rod an email. Maybe we'll create one. That could be fun.
I would love it. Yeah.
Okay, Rod, my number 5 book is my most recent read, at least in these of my building wealth books / self-help.
Okay.
This is my latest read. But this one's better in terms of like more focused on wealth. And it is How Rich People Think by Steve Seibold. You familiar with it? Anyone familiar with it?
No.
Okay. It's really good. And it sounds a lot like my other books, right? How Rich People Think basically compares the thoughts, habits, and strategies, ideas, philosophies of wealthy people versus those of middle class and lower class to help you understand what are the, again, thoughts, habits, and strategies and philosophies that those people are doing. And it just says, do the same thing. Like, find the successful people, do the same thing. So it kind of goes with that, like, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around. It's kind of in that same framework where if you just understand what other wealthy, successful people do, it's almost hard to go wrong, right? Yeah. Getting in that mindset, that framework, it just changes things. So, and I really believe that step happens. Again, I keep saying this, but that step happens first. You've got to make money. You've got to create money. You've got to build, and then you can invest. And then what's really unique and amazing about that is when you become an investor, you can become a much more prolific investor than you ever were, like an earner off of your own income. You absolutely can do that. But again, generally it takes money first, and then it becomes like kind of like this cycling approach where everything grows because of it. So, okay, Rod, those were my top 5. I've got Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant, Think and Grow Rich, Go Giver series, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and finally, How Rich People Think by Steve Seibold.
Like it. I'm going to have to read that one.
Okay, so now this is good news. We've both at least, okay, so you had like 2 or 3. It was probably 2.5. I've read half of the books on your list.
Okay.
So, and you have probably read most of the books, but at least one. At least one.
Yeah, I need to go back. Okay.
Rod, I have great news for you.
All right.
We have some bonus books. I don't know if it's great news for the listeners, but this is good news for you and I. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get into these. I think they'll be fun. Okay, Rod, this first one, the next place that we wanted to go to was just a bonus book that was really anywhere you want to go. And then once we do that, we're going to finish with these are you must not reads. Okay. Or at least a must not read. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your bonus book, Rod?
So my bonus book is Les Miserables.
Les Miserables. I should have known that too.
So it started with the musical. I was, I don't know, 12 years old or something when Les Miserables hit Broadway. So like through my whole teenage years, I enjoyed it. My family enjoyed it. Friends enjoyed it. Like it was just like the music
that was it.
That you just heard all over the place. And it's still out there, right? Like you can still.
It is.
I could go 2 or 3 times a year, just going to local high schools or places to continue hearing it. And I do.
You would find it.
But what happened is, when I got in and read the story, like the backstory and the details, just like took it to a whole new level. So if you like Les Mis, the musical, you have to,
And
you
you
must
gotta go check out.
read the
It's
book.
a must read.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I'm going to take it to another level, and people are going to be like rolling their eyes, and I know
Oh boy, Rod.
you'll be tempted to go read an abridged version because they're out there. Don't do it. Don't let yourself stoop
Rod, I can
to
assure you
reading
that I
the
will not be
abridged version.
tempted to read either version. I can assure you. Now that's
Okay,
coming from
well,
someone who loves musicals. I love musicals, but Les Miserables is not my favorite musical, but I like it. I
yeah.
like it.
Well,
It's a fun one.
here's what I can tell you. If you'll read the first 100 pages, you'll be hooked.
It's not Hamilton, Rod, but it's pretty good.
No, and I would love
I would
love to read more about Hamilton.
It's
Get
fun.
into the details on in his
Oh,
life.
my
Undergirds all
stepdaughter,
those
well, really
things.
my oldest daughter Kate and stepdaughter Addie both have just like dug into the backstories of
Yeah,
all of those
that's
things, and
awesome.
it is really fun. So you're right, it creates, to your point, learning those things creates a unique context to the play, the musical, and probably teaches a whole bunch of unique and interesting lessons along the way.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, Rod, mine, I feel like I didn't get very diverse on this at all.
Okay.
But can I just tell you, I don't read for fun, really. Like I read for fun in the sense that it's like fun to like build a business and grow and like those kind of things. But
Yeah.
I don't really like leisure read. I shouldn't say that. If I do, it's normally like sports stuff, right? So I'm reading stuff online, articles and things like that. But when I actually sit down and read, if I'm on a plane or, places like that where I have long periods of time where I'm just hanging out,
Yeah.
normally I read self-help books.
Yeah.
Well, Rod, in true form, I'm sticking with it. My bonus book is 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. I don't know what to say. It just spliced up all of these leadership concepts and ideas into like manageable ways to think about them.
Yeah.
And so, I think about these things like the law of the lid. Like I hadn't really thought of this, but like now I have some context, and as I'm trying to lead and build, I can sit and look at those things and say like, okay, how did I measure up to this? If this is the standard, right? If we're trying to if I can believe that these are irrefutable laws,
Yeah.
then my goal is, of course, to be on the right side of those. The problem is it's really difficult to even understand what all those are. And so I'm not saying that 21 is necessarily all inclusive, but it's pretty inclusive, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a pretty big list.
Number. Yeah.
So anyway, I love that book, and I'll also say one of my favorite mentors read it with me. It was one of our kind of it was in like a leadership book club.
Yeah.
And getting the kind of unique perspectives of other people as we went through it, I think the whole thing made the experience unique and fun. And so that one stays on my must read, not necessarily financial specific, but I believe has been one of the books that has helped me make money.
Awesome. I like
Okay,
it.
right now I'm really excited. We're getting in the not to reads. Yeah. Woo!
Initially,
Okay, I've been waiting all day for this.
Yeah, when you threw out this idea, I thought, man, I don't know. Like I feel like I read and I just try to glean, and so like a not to read. And then as I started looking around, and I realized,
and you're like, oh, don't read this.
That's the one. That's the one.
Okay, well, hopefully we don't have the same one, Rod.
We might.
Do you want to bust it out first?
I feel like I've trumped your
okay. But I do have two.
Okay.
So if you zig, I can zag.
Yeah, I'll zig. Okay.
You go first. My number one not to read is also
Total Money
Makeover, or anything else by Dave Ramsey for that matter.
Yeah.
Really, he's kind of just a phony. Like he's basically an actor. He like that's what it's about. It's about interacting and like, you know, the way that he cuts people off, and like it's about entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
While some of the concepts and principles work for the average person, if you take all of that on the whole, I am 100% convinced that you will slow down, especially if you're comparing to like the more effective methodology. So okay, if you go with the Ramsey methodology, and that's from like just being an overspender and not doing anything, like, yeah, that's better. That's better. But in terms of comparing that to the most effective ways to actually build wealth, it absolutely is not. And it's just borderline ridiculousness.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's my mini rant about Dave. I totally stole it. So sorry. Why is it on your list, Rod?
Well, so what's funny is and kind of like you said, it's not like there's zero value there. Like if you look at it and you say, okay, well, I should be careful about debt. If that's what the message you got out of it, then great. That's not what he's saying, though. He's saying avoid all debt, right? So
yep. Any house you buy, first time house, you better have $1 million saved up if you live on any coast, so that you can get your like, you know, 800 square foot apartment.
yeah.
And again, like it's just not practical and realistic for so many people.
And I know people who are on that path, and I just feel like they're never going to get a house because 10 years ago they were thinking, if we can just save up, we can get $200,000 saved up, then we'll go buy this home. You maybe you like have a picture of it hanging on your wall, like this is my goal. Well, how long is it going to take someone who's 25 years old, you know, working an $80,000 a year job, and you know has, in this case, you know, 4 or 5 kids? How long is it going to take to get there? Well, it's going to take probably 10 to 15 years. Well, guess what? 10 to 15 years later, that $200,000 house, you're going to have $600,000.
Okay, but here's the worst part. It's not necessary, but it gets even worse than what you're saying, Rod. Not only are they not going to have a house, but they're going to have missed the appreciation that they could have gotten by owning a house, even if it was on leverage. Not even if the value is that it's on leverage, or at least a component that's an element of it. So you've missed out potentially on, again, look at 10 years ago. You gave this example. Well, 10 years ago, if I bought that house that was $250,000, it was a starter house, and I put $30 or $40 or $50,000 down on it. Well, my house literally doubled, or maybe more than that, in value over that time frame. And so by trying to buckle down and save every penny before you get into the house, because you can't have any debt, you've literally like backed the truck up. Like even somebody that had no budgeting skills over that time but bought their house is now further ahead than you.
Yeah.
Think about that. It's crazy. Anyway, and we could go into a bunch of those, which we have a few times. So if you're interested in some of our takes on the Total Money Makeover, you can go check out our Dave Ramsey episode.
Yeah, we got a couple of them.
Okay, Rod.
Yeah, let's hear yours. I'm excited now.
My not to read number 1 was the Total Money Makeover.
Okay.
And I've got a question for you before we close up, but I'm going to give out my book, and then don't let me close up without asking you this question. Okay. The second one for me, Rod, is, and this might be surprising to some people listening, probably not so much to you. Number 2, Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. That's right. That is an absolute must not read. And as I think about it, I totally could have put it in my top 5. I just thought about it later.
That's pretty
funny.
So
it worked out. I mean, I guess I couldn't put it in my top 5 because anyway, you get what I'm saying. It's one of those things that I'm like passionate about, because obviously we use life insurance to help people build wealth. And all I can say is that more often than not, becoming your own banker screws up expectations, skews ideas, makes people think that it does things that it doesn't. It gets overhyped, like all of these things that just, now it has probably helped people along the way, right? Yeah. Undoubtedly that if you like really locked in, figured it out, like you could do, but I just feel like, Rod, it confuses more people than it helps. And in our world, we're not about this concept of becoming your own banker. We're about using life insurance as a tool to help us build wealth. And that's the way we do. And of course, protect our wealth too. So I should say using it as a tool to help us build and protect our wealth, but it's not everything to us. And that's, I think, the biggest difference. Most people that come away from becoming your own banker think that that you have to use life insurance in this all-inclusive way that just becomes overwhelming. And for a lot of people, it puts a bad taste in their mouth because now it looks like, oh, this is an agent book where they're just trying to sell life insurance.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I hate Nelson Nash's book. I'm sorry, Nelson. I apologize. I do not like that book. And by the way, it's a terrible read. It is a terrible read. It just pains me going through it.
Yeah,
so anyway,
I love the parts in that just really get your dander up. It's great.
I can't. You don't even want to get me going on that. But anyway, okay. So that's my final must not read book. And Rod, I think I was more passionate about it, that must not read, than any of my must reads.
True. And if you want more passion from Christian on that, then go check out the podcast we did called Why We Don't Do Infinite Banking.
Yep.
It's one of those things. It's like it gets so close to what we're doing, and so people just assume that we're totally on board with it, and
we very much are not. Rod,
it's different. Yeah.
Okay. Question.
Okay.
Rod, how do your top 5 must-read wealth-building books apply to our philosophy in making sure that we're investing with benefits?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like that's really easy on the Rich Dad Poor Dad cash flow quadrant side, because it really is. It's that building that philosophy around what you're doing. Again, investing is critical, right? Like, we're going to get where we want to go because we are smart in the way that we invest. But we often get so myopic in what investing is supposed to be, and it's all about the return, or like that's most often like, hey, I have to create whatever XYZ return. But there are so many other things that you can do around your investing to make it better, to improve the return. Ultimately, it's gonna take you to a much better place as far as the return goes. But you're not always necessarily measuring it by the return, the taxes, the investment optimizer, creating extra return, etc. Like all these different things. And what those books do is they set you up to approach things that way, right? Your money or your life. It's again kind of creating some context around what you're doing. So it's not just about the investing, it's about how you contextualize the investing.
Yeah, and Rod, that's a perfect segue into kind of a couple points I'm thinking of. To your point, when we think of investing, we often think of it myopically, and we oftentimes think of it exclusively with money.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it could be investments in time, people, energy, processes, strategies. All of these things are things that we invest in. And really, the philosophy is about doing it with maximum efficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just thinking myopically about the one thing, but taking into account all those things around us. So we talk about it, multi-purposing money. The same thing can be true with multi-purposing time, talents, abilities, processes, all of those things. And so from my perspective, at least in some way, shape, or form, all of these books hit on various ways that we can focus on being as maximally opportunistic as we possibly can. And that's really what the Invest with Benefits philosophy is.
Brilliant.
Okay. So, Rod, do you have any final thoughts before we call it?
I want to follow up on your thought about book club. People, let us know if you're interested. Rod at moneyinsightsgroup.com. I would totally love that.
Rod's totally a bookie. And I think, you brought this up to me recently, didn't you? Maybe it was someone else.
Maybe
it might have been Heather who brought up the idea of doing a book club. But anyway, I know that a lot of people out there are all into reading, and there's something unique and cool about being able to get with other people who believe and feel similarly. And it just helps all boats rise together, right?
That's right.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. If you're going to invest, Rod, make sure you invest with benefits.
Thank you for listening to the Money Insights Podcast. To learn more about the financial and business strategies discussed in this show, please visit moneyinsights.net. The views and opinions expressed on the Money Insights Podcast are not intended to be individual financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult with the appropriate advisor before making financial decisions. And if you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This will help others find the show and learn wealth building strategies for themselves. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.